Olympians are very inspiring people. And my favorite Olympian is right here, Fani Palli. Thanks for being here. Professor Platias, if Hitler, Stalin, and Assad had been exposed to Olympic truce as children, they might not have become Hitler, Stalin, and Assad. And on your other point, that it's a societal issue, individuals make up society. Individuals make it up. And today's social world, individuals have power. And you should speak to Mubarak about that. And of course, to Gaddafi, if you could have found him. I'd like you all, please, to reach out your hands to the people sitting on each side of you and just hold hands for a second. Just hold hands with those on each side of you. Just hold hands. You're doing it across the aisle. That's fantastic. Holding of hands. This is the root meaning of the word ekehiria. And when you're holding hands, how on earth can you fight? When you're holding hands and looking into the eyes of the other, how on earth can you fight? The answer is, you can't. There is a second interpretation of the word ekehiria, by the way, and it is equally powerful. It means to hold back one's hands. In other words, hands off your weapons. In other words, hands off your enemy. Such smart stuff, such simply smart stuff, which, by the way, says yinete, if anyone wants to hear that word. And it immediately brings to mind the words of Robert Kennedy. Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Greece has given many great things to the world. One of the greatest is the Olympic Games, Olympism, the Olympic ideals, and the Olympic truce. At a time when the world needs inspiration for peace, the world needs the ideals of Olympism and the Olympic truce. Truce inspires peace, and its inspiration allows the foundation, and this is more important, on which to build a culture of peace, intolerant of conflict, hatred, and division, to prevent Hitlers and Stalins and Assads from ever emerging. I consider myself lucky. I've worked with many great people on many great projects for many of the world's greatest brands. But one of the greatest of all has been the International Olympic Truce Center, which I've been involved with since its inception in the year 2000. And I've been involved in the best way, with passion. One of the reasons is this. I was born in South Africa, apartheid South Africa. A beautiful country filled with beautiful people of all colors and religions living under an extremely ugly regime. South Africa was paradise, a comfortable place if you were born with a white skin. It was hell, a nightmare if you were black. A country of institutionalism, of institutionalized racism, reinforced by law and the Constitution. And in the case of the Dutch Reformed Church, by religion too. Separate residential areas, separate transportation, separate schools, separate restaurants, beaches, and cinemas, believe it or not. Separate places of worship, as though God has a color. A system designed to minimize interaction between black and white. And with something called the Immorality Act, listen to this, which actually made interracial sex, and therefore interracial love, a criminal offense punishable with imprisonment. How ridiculous. Marriage between black and white, forget about it. An abnormally savage place which in the mind of a young child represented the way the world was. How could we know better? It was illegal to know better. 2 days ago, I met a fellow South African. She hadn't been back for many years. I go back every year. She said to me, "What has changed down there?" I said, "My young nephew has a best friend who is black." That is a huge change in that country. It could never have happened. Let's backtrack back to 1994. Apartheid was abolished. For the first time in forever, all people were equal in the eyes of the law. Theoretically, at least, the source of conflict had been eliminated. Peace had been enforced. But that was no guarantee that years of oppression would not lead to the explosion of a truly destructive, devastating bomb filled with hatred and revenge. Peace was inspired in the form of Nelson Mandela. I want to draw a distinction here in leaders and those who lead. There are leaders and there are those who lead, and this is not a semantic distinction. Leaders are in positions of authority. We follow them because we have to. We need to. They enforce themselves upon us. And then there are those who lead. We follow them because we want to. We choose to because they inspire us. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. And this makes all the difference. Peace cannot be enforced. Peace must be inspired. We need to want peace for ourselves. Lasting peace can only come about this way because we want it. Nelson Mandela understood that. And King Ephitos understood that. The oracle said to him, "Have games." And the first Olympic Games were organized in 70-76 BC. A truce was declared, and this is how mortal enemies became sporting adversaries as they competed vigorously, I might add, at the ancient Olympic Games. It's how Jesse Owens and Lutz Long in Berlin, an African American and a blonde Aryan, became lifelong friends. It wouldn't have happened. It's also how conflict ceased long enough in Sarajevo in 1994 to allow thousands of young children to be inoculated. We have all witnessed humanity in all its beautiful diversity, marching into the stadium as one, and we have all been inspired to wonder, why can't it always be like this? Imposition is an expression of hard power. People respond to hard power because they have to. Inspiration is an expression of soft power, and people respond to it because they want to. Its pull is magnetic. Its charm is charismatic. That is why soft power at the end of the day is infinitely more powerful than hard power, because it builds culture. It shapes society by shaping the attitudes and behavior of the individuals within that society. Much of the work of the Olympic Truce Center is focused on building culture, working with future generations to prevent future Hitlers, bridging the gaps between the Olympic Games, when we all naturally get inspired by the spectacle, with educational programs, schools, universities, creating an everyday culture of peace, building a generation who will choose peace, a culture whose only intolerance will be the intolerance of intolerance, a culture which will seek out what unites, understand and accept, respect and appreciate that which divides. A culture which will allow deep friendships to blossom, like the one between Jesse Owens and Lutz Long, and between my nephew and his best friend, Sipho. John Lennon sang, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one." Imagine peace. Thank you very much.